Hi, welcome to the January 22nd, 2021 Club Cubase Google Hangout. I'm going to do a quick audio test. Bear with me just for a second. Hi, welcome to the... Okay, audio seems to be coming through okay. So what we're going to... my name is Greg Undo. I'm the host for the Hangout today. So you see it's not kind of showing up regularly how it does on the... Okay, so it looks like it's starting to show up now. So let me just make sure everything is kind of working as expected on my end, because the links usually show up a little differently on the YouTube channel. So let me just make sure that this is going okay. Okay, so my name is Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist for Steinberg North America, based in the United States. How the Hangout works, if you haven't attended one before, you could actually just go and you could ask questions in two different ways. One way is to ask the questions in the live chat field. And if you wanted to also send questions in advance, you could do that at Club Cubase at steinberg.de. So you're able to submit questions in advance if you have something that's maybe a little more involved. So how the Hangout works is you could ask questions there. We'll try to go through each of the questions in chronological order. I may lose an occasional question as my chat fields kind of will reset themselves. So I'll apologize if that happens, but we'll try to go through as many of the questions as completely and succinctly as possible. So if, the ability to ask questions will far exceed my ability to answer them. So if you ask a question, I will try to get to it unless it disappears in one of those times. But, asking a question repeatedly a number of different times won't necessarily, make that question be answered quicker. So that often kind of just slows down the process for me to kind of read through the same question over and over again. So if we could try to avoid doing that as you ask questions, if we could say, what operating system we're on, what version of Cubase, that's helpful. So if you say I'm running, Mac OS on, let's say, Cubase Pro 10.5 or Windows 10, Cubase Elements 11. So all that information is sometimes helpful. I believe today is Ambient Dave's birthday, so we'll extend a special birthday wish to Ambient Dave. I don't know if he's on yet. All right, so we see Ambient Dave. All right, so good to see you and happy birthday if my memory serves correct. So let's go ahead, and if you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you're from, we'll get started in just a couple minutes, but we'll let people do some quick introductions. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. So, but if you want to tell us who you are, where you're from, and also if this is your first Hangout, that'd be great to know as well. And again, just kind of ask questions in the chat field, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and see who is on. So I'll just take a quick look, seeing some familiar faces. All right, so we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas. Good to see Robbie. We have the tuba guy from Switzerland. We have Jan from Cubase Index. We have John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we have Stefan from Sweden. All right. Okay, so we have Ali from Iran. All right. We have Turkey represented. All right, so we have Pablo from Galicia, España. All right, so we have Carlos from Colombia, Sir Robert from Atlanta. So we didn't really have any special NAMM announcements. So the virtual NAMM show was happening this week. So just to answer Robert's question. All right, so we have Tacoma, Washington. Haven't been there in a while. Love that part of the United States. All right, good to see Neurotic Nexus from Germany, I believe. Okay, so we have Canada, India, Scotland, Stockholm, Slovenia, Montreal. All right, so we have Houston, Texas. My brother lives there. Saudi Arabia, UK. All right, so we have Agent K. He never discloses where he lives, but good to see him on. He's always incredibly helpful for doing some moderation for us as we need it. So if you want to go ahead and ask your questions, feel free to enter them in the comments field, and we'll get started here in just about another minute. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back to my other feed here. So let's go ahead and get started so people won't complain that we take too much time on introductions. We still want to keep it. All right. All right. Okay, so let's just go ahead. All right, so we have Timothy from Las Vegas. All right, so question from the Tuba guy. I have multiple tracks in group editing mode. I want to free warp altogether. Is there a way? Or copying warp settings from one track to another? So currently there isn't really a way. Let me just go ahead and the warping is still kind of limited to kind of one track at a time. I think it's an issue that, kind of the product development team is aware of. But if we want to do, so a lot of people want it to do kind of, like more of a multi-track audio warp. And as if you're not familiar with kind of the group editing, if you have a number of different tracks in a folder, we could lock, these folders, these tracks together for group editing. So if I move one, they'll all be kind of locked together. And this is often for doing like, drum quantizing. So if I wanted to, cut, if I wanted to adjust, different components, let's say sizing, we could just have these different edits applied. But the warping, you would still need to kind of do it kind of on a track by track basis. So if you wanted to do different free warping, so I know, that the product planning, that they're kind of aware of this particular, request. So, we'll see if it gets implemented in the future. So, but currently there isn't like a real great workaround to do kind of a multi-track free warping. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. What is the difference between post and prefader when using plugins as to what effect it has on them? So let's go ahead and take a quick look at pre and post fader effects handling. Okay, so let's say I'll just kind of jump to this project here. Okay, so let's say I have and this will kind of work for, different reverbs and sends or in the insert effects as well. So let's say if I have a reverb on the voice here. So if we solo this. And I just have this dry. So when I turn this on, we could have this be pre or post fader for inserts. And how it's indicated on inserts is when we actually see this green line. Above the green line is pre-fader, below is post-fader. But now if I wanted to just right click, I could say, let's move it to pre-fader. And now I could have the same kind of effects level regardless of where the fader position is. So that's not going to affect the actual amount of the send going, of the audio going into the send. Whereas this is set to post fader. And just right click. The louder that the fader is, that affects the gain structure going into the effect send and how much signal is going to be kind of going into to be blended with. So if I turn that down, we don't hear any of the changes. So if I don't want the volume level of the fader to affect the gain structure, I could put that to pre-fader. And that amount of the effect will only be done by the send here. So that's not going to affect the amount of signal going into the actual effect as we work there. So that's kind of the difference between pre and post faders. All right. Okay, so it's just going through some introductions here. All right, so we see the tuba guy made his first $400 with audio recording. That's great. Congratulations. Now you can buy more Cubase stuff, so it's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. It's always great. I remember when I got my first Cubase, it was my last semester of college, and I got it on a Sunday night, and I did a project for, ironically, my college professor who I was taking a class from was hiring me to do production work for her. So I made I made $150 profit with Cubase within 24 hours. So I always liked Cubase after that a lot. Okay, so we see from Jonas from Sweden here. Is it possible to hide unused insert slots? It kind of occupies a lot of space. So in the full mixer, so here we could actually see all 16 insert slots. We could see it, I believe, if we go to our mix console view here for the project, we see kind of the full amount of slots. But if we go into the main mix console, we can come over here. Let's say if I wanted to see all of my inserts, you click on the little drop down arrow just to the right here. So you could, where you see the racks tab. So if it's in the full screen mixer, we can just choose to have a fixed number of slots, which will show all of the slots. Or if we wanted to just see like one extra insert slot versus, in addition to the highest number of inserts. So within the full mix console, we could just choose to see uncheck fixed number of slots. And at that point, you could, and I believe that will also kind of carry over for sends as well. So let's say if I choose fixed number of slots, I see all 8 sends, all 16 inserts, or just choose to uncheck that, and then I only see the sends and inserts plus 1 in addition to what I'm using. Okay. Okay, let's just, all right, so it's good to see Jan from CubaseIndex.com. So if you wanted to search for different topics, that we've covered in Hangouts, it's a great website for that. So make sure you check that out. Okay, just... so we see from, hi, is there a way to change time signature during the song in Cubase Elements? So let me go to open up Elements. I think it's going to work the same way. Let me just... So let's say if I have Cubase Elements here. So this would probably be in conjunction with the tempo track. So let's say if I see if there's not it's under transport. Okay, let me just see if it's under. I always do it kind of the graphic way in the full version. Okay, so if you go to the tempo track editor, which is just Control or Command T. So at this point, we could start in 4/4. So let's say, and then just click, right click and grab your mouse tool. And then you could say, okay, here I want it to be 3/4. So I'll just say 3/4. And then we could go back to 4/4 to 2/4. And let's say back to 4/4. So now as we do this, so you have 4/4, 3/4, 2/4, or 1/2, yeah, 2/4, and then back to 4/4. So that's how you could. So just hit Control or Command T, and then you should be able to just. That will open up your tempo track for you. So Control or Command T, and then at the very top, just kind of select your pencil tool, and then you're able to just kind of draw in your different tempo signatures in Cubase elements. All right, so get back to our full version of Cubase. Okay, so we have a question from Tim Weinheimer. Hi, Greg. Tim from Mission, I think it's Mission Viejo, California. How do I put a noise gate on a noise plugin? I use Wires by Audio Thing. I want it to stay silent until that track is being played. So let's say if I just had a lot of, let's just say, let's see if I could set this up. I'll just do a quick gain adjustment here. And let's see if we hear just a noise floor. So I'll just kind of come. So we can see kind of just a little bit of, so I could see that signal there. And what I could do is just come, to use a noise gate to start with, we could just go to your channel strip, and here I have a noise gate kind of turned on. So we may just have, let's see if we could hear a little bit of signal here. Maybe I'll just turn that part up so we could hear it a little more. So you'll just hear, like, this is, let's say, our noise floor that we're hearing. So if I wanted to put a noise gate on, I could just, set the threshold amount so that signal, that gate is closed until the vocal comes in. So that opened the gate there. So that way we're not going to hear any signal. Now, if it's, when you say you're, It says I put a noise gate on a noise plugin. I use wires by Audio Thing. I want to stay silent until that track is being played. So if it's, if you have if it's a plugin, so that's how a gate works. And this, noise gate plugin could be just, put directly after. So under dynamics at this point, you could just choose the gate. And after the gate, at that point, you could choose, to place it after a plugin. If this is going into like an effects send, so let's say I'm using my reverb. So let's say here I have my reverence. And if I wanted to do something like gate the reverb, so if you go to the effects channel track, you could put the gate directly after that. And as we have the noise gate, that will just kind of gate, the process right after that reverb. So if you wanted to, and this is, like the classic Phil Collins, drum sound from the 80s where we have this huge reverb that just suddenly cuts off, so without a traditional decay. So you get this big like, and then it just cuts off, and that's just applying the gate directly after like a gated reverb. So, but I'm not familiar so much with the wires by Audio Thing, but if that's something kind of unique, Tim, just let me know in the comments. Okay. All right, so we have Uno checking in from Finland. Great to have you on. Okay, so just see, is it possible to copy the velocities mostly with MIDI? And if it is not, I feel like we should be able to select velocities and copy them. So what you could do is, let's say if we have, if you wanted to save those as kind of a preset, so just do quickly jump to maybe a new project. Show you a little trick that a lot of people don't know, because velocity is actually a component of a MIDI note message. So I'll just quickly add an instrument track here. Okay, and let's say if I just wanted to take some velocities, I'll just record something in quickly. Unmute, that would help. Okay, so let's say we have something like this. It has like how loud we struck the keys, and if we want it to apply just, that velocity pattern to another part, we could select it. And this may seem counterintuitive at first, but if you go to the little quantize panel, drag and drop, so let's say I'm going to select all the notes here, and I could just drag this particular part right into my quantize window. Now, as I do this, what's kind of interesting, let me just cut off the very first part here. So let's say I drag this part in. All right, so I could see that we have this quantize settings here. And what I could do is you could save this as a preset. So if I wanted to now, let's say these are all, instead of our little, different volume changes. So what I could do now is, if these were all the same velocity, we could apply this as kind of a quantize preset, and we could set the position to 0 and the velocity to 100. So now when I select this event, I could quantize, and we see that the velocities, I'll undo that. If we look at the velocities patterns here, I could just choose to quantize, and it's not going to actually affect the timing of the notes, but just the velocities will be incorporated. So you could carry over kind of like a different velocity patterns and build your own libraries quite easily. So. Okay, so question: if vocals sample and vocals live vocal are not sitting in the mix, what solution does Greg have? What is the most common mistake producers make to fix this problem? So when we want to, so let's say with vocals, I think there's a lot of people, when I see projects, may spend a lot of, I see people doing lots of just over processing. So, some simple things to make vocals kind of sit in the mix. One is always to have a great singer, that, always is helpful. It was one of my friends, Ed Cherney. He was a wonderful engineer. One of his favorite quotes I ever heard, could be one of my favorite audio quotes, was, it's like, my mixes got so much better when I started working with better musicians, So, but let's take a look just at this particular file here. And I'll take a look at the processing, and I'll just kind of bypass the processing that I have on this. That was okay. Guess all along I was so naive. So I have just a bit of reverb. Packing boxes ready to leave. Our musical history. So now let's say if I want to, I've got to choose. And I may just put a little bit of compression. Cause now you're asking Beatles or Stones. And then a little bit of EQ. Something about that just sounds so wrong. What is to it away to start a fight? Take the and I also have kind of the pre-section. Please stop asking Beatles or Stones. So you can hear there, especially like on breaths, kind of doing the, the low cut. So as we kind of come here, let's say, you hear some of those plosives. So I just kind of take those frequencies out. Just leave it alone. So that way you kind of get a lot of what could be mud, kind of very muddy in there in those frequencies, so that's when stuff tends not to work and could clash in mixes. So I've got to choose what's mine and what's yours. So that could kind of affect some of the transients. Something about that just sounds so wrong. What is to it? And then, one trick that, I was just speaking with a, kind of famous producer, kind of Mr. New Jack Swing himself, Mr. Teddy Riley last night. We were just catching up. And one of the things, that we just kind of were talking about in our conversation is actually, knowing, like, I could say this song is in the key of A flat. So maybe as I'm adjusting the EQ, so we can see that right now I'm at like G7, but I could just come here. So I'm pretty much in the ballpark, but I could hit A flat 7 and then EQ based on the key of the song. So you see so many people, it's like, oh, vocals, you have to always, boost these particular frequencies. Well, those frequencies change depending upon the key of the song. So, if you're EQing really heavily around D and the song is in the key of A, you're kind of fighting yourself in essence. So always be aware of, some of the different components that are going on. Now, something else that's really, is checking out the comparison EQ. So let's say I have my vocals here, and let's say I wanted to work with the guitar. So I could enable this mode here and have the guitar. And now I could adjust just the guitar EQ by coming here. So if I had like clashing frequencies, I could just kind of come there and say, okay, let's listen to both the guitar. And I could say, okay, now I want it to EQ the voice where it's clashing. Hear it in context. And just be able to switch between the guitar EQ. So once I have this selected, I'm just EQing the guitar. And now I could click here and I'm EQing the vocal. Just leave it alone. So I'm not like super heavy-handed processing wise, and I see people that will have 12 different inserts on their vocals, and to me it reminds me of the guitar player that has 24 pedals that can never quite get the tones together because the pedals gain structure are kind of fighting against each other, and what one pedal is doing is not really contingent upon what the other pedal was designed to do. So, I'm like to generally keep things pretty simple as much as possible, so some simple low cut stuff, make sure like on the reverb as well, that you're on the reverb return, that you kind of cut the lows out. And that could add some mud in the lead vocals and, EQ around the frequencies that are present in the project. And I think those things will help with you, Jan. So, hey, Greg, what is Cubase going to look like in 2024? Will it be more musician or engineer friendly? Yes. So I it's always fascinating speculating, and there's probably someone has a master roadmap of, where they anticipate different things. But I know with every release that the developers try to make sure that there's, stuff for guys that are doing pop production. There's stuff for guys that are, recording bands and singer-songwriters. And there's guys that are doing, a lot of stuff with, for composers. So, I don't think that we'll see it all, skew so much. And I think that's one of the great things of Cubase, is that you could work in so many kind of different genres and feel like Cubase is working with you. So I don't anticipate it going all musician or all engineer or all kind of beat programming, but I think all those different aspects will be enhanced. So, but I'm excited to see where Cubase will be in 2024. So, and it depends upon the input that we get in sessions like this and from customers, and as hardware components change and software concepts and operating systems evolve. So, it's a really fascinating process to, see the evolution of that. But I know that, in 2024, when the new version of Cubase comes out, whatever it'll be called, that, like the first time I'll boot it up, I'll still be excited to work with it. So. Okay, so a question: how do I edit individual segments, EQ effects separate from the track settings? So, let's say if you wanted to edit, so individual segments. Okay, so if you wanted to apply effects, and maybe this is where the question is, if you wanted to apply effects independent of the track settings. So we kind of get this a lot, like, okay, I want to take like the vocal here. So let's say if I wanted to put a delay. So let's say where she said the word naive in the vocal. So I'm just going to grab my range selection tool, and I'm going to select that and then hit F7. And this will open up your direct offline processing. So, and here I could just run it. Let's say I just want to do a mono delay, and I want it to be, let's say, a dotted eighth note delay. So as we listen to this now, that effect has been applied. So let's go ahead and just. So let's say, and if you like, so this is actually kind of processing the file, but you could undo it at any time. So let's say if I wanted to do maybe a quarter note delay, let's do a dotted quarter, and I'll just bring the mix down slightly. So now I could just apply the effect. So that way you could just kind of burn it into the file. And a lot of people, if you've been doing digital audio on computers for a long time, have realized that this will actually, is in the early days was deemed kind of a destructive edit, meaning that you couldn't, once you did that, you were kind of committed to it. So a lot of people liked running the processing in, as inserts or sends and automating that because it was a destructive process and you weren't committed to a decision early on in the production process. So with this, at any time, I could go back and say, you know what, I just wanted to change that setting on the plugin. That will update. Or if I did 7 processes, I could remove process 3 and change the order of them and still have the original files intact to work with. So this is kind of a never ever destructive process, and at that point you could just do stuff like that. But if I'm misunderstanding Timothy, your question about that, just let me know. But so you always have the ability of running your inserts and sends here independently, but if you just wanted to put effects on a track, you could just simply just do the direct offline processing. So you just see a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to use folder tracks on the mix console so you can close grouped channels and save scrolling across the mix console all the time? So there really isn't, the folder tracks are really kind of organizational tools that we have here. So let's say if I wanted to go, let's say to another project, and let's say if we have like all of our drums in a folder track on this particular project. So we're kind of playing along here. All right, so let's say if I have my drums in a folder, we have these visibility options as well. So, and what this could allow us to do is to say, okay, I only want to see these particular tracks, like the drums are in this folder. I could hold down Shift and click. And if I have this setting set here to sync project and mix console, and we could do this for either the 3 mix consoles in Cubase or 4 in Nuendo, that I could now just see only what is selected. So if I want to see, bass, guitars, whatever visibility options that I have here, or I could just choose to say, okay, let's show all tracks. But I could just, one click and just say, okay, let's just Shift click, and then my mix console is automatically updated. Now, if I'm in the full screen mix console, so let's say if I want to filter my input channels and I have my inserts, let's say routing, inserts, EQ, and let's say our, so let's say our sends, and I wanted this to, so let's say I have this, and I only want to see my drum tracks. Again, within my mix console, I could just click on the folder with Shift, and then it's only showing those particular tracks. So we could just have that kind of automatically show what's in the folder quite easily, but these configurations can also be saved. So I could say, we're gonna call this configuration drums. And then I wanted to have a different configuration that was just bass and guitars and my instrument. So I could say, let's add a configuration here. And you could just call these up through keyboard shortcuts as well. And these configurations could include other different aspects. So we could just, if I wanted to see meters on my drums, so say if I come here and I wanted to see my meters, on drums, so say I want to see wave meters. So I could just come right over here and, if you wanted to move different configurations. So, you could do stuff like that as well, just to kind of see these so you don't have to constantly scroll back and forth kind of all day left to right. So use the visibility options. And one of them that's like really pretty amazing, let's say if I only have showed on a different project where we have more tracks going in and out. So these visibility configurations, if you haven't really utilized them. So let's say, here I have lots of different tracks going on. But let's say I only want to see tracks in the mix console that are actually where stuff is playing at the particular moment in time. So there's where you could actually see only tracks that are playing at that particular moment in time. Let me just see if I could. So, you'll have different meter, different visibility configurations for that as well. So really kind of explore your different configurations. And, you can come up with some pretty amazing things. But even here, we could just say, I just wanted to see my track visibility. So at this point I could say show only tracks that are playing at the cursor position and hide everything else. So, if you want to work with folders, just synchronize the visibility with your mix console, and you could do that kind of right here, just on the inspector. And that's where you could synchronize the visibility between what you see here and the mixer. So if I only wanted to see my congas folder, again, it's just shift click, and then I'm only seeing, the congas folder here. So I'll just hide my input channels, and if I wanted to see everything or just now wanted to see only drums, just come here. There's only my drums. Here's my MIDI drums. Here's my percussion. I want to see background vocals. I want to see parts. I want to see my VST instruments. Let's get to the guitar tracks, and that will synchronize very easily. So give that a shot, Matthew, and let me know how it works out for you. Okay. So we have a question. Any word on Silicon Max compatibility? So when I talked with the some of the guys on the Cubase team last week. So they're still doing investigations into it. So, they're obviously looking at doing it, but there's quite a lot of changes. So a lot of people are currently running it under Rosetta, and I've seen, different YouTube videos indicating that, but I haven't really, but it's being investigated. It's quite a big undertaking. It's not like flipping a switch. So you may have to run it under Rosetta mode for a while. Okay, good to see Paul from Lynchburg, Virginia. Okay, so I just see from Jazz Dude, good to see you on a Hangout. Greg, would you please explain to Elements AI LE users that the software e-licenser without a physical dongle is bound with the computer and can't just be used on several PCs? So, and another comment kind of following, it's they should invest into a USB dongle. So, if you have Cubase LE AI, which are the OEM versions that you get with other hardware choices that you sell, so if you buy an audio interface, it often will come with Cubase LE AI. And so usually third-party interfaces come with Cubase LE, and then there's Cubase AI, which comes with Steinberg or Yamaha products. So that's a kind of a light version of Cubase. So these can be run off the software e-licenser, and this also goes for Cubase Elements. And with the software e-licenser, you have a choice. So you could have it installed to a particular computer, or you can install the license to a USB e-licenser. So you can transfer kind of one direction. So you could transfer a license that's already installed to one particular computer, and then you could just transfer that. You could buy a USB e-licenser, transfer that license to the USB e-licenser, and move that license to any computer, install Cubase on a zillion computers, and just simply connect a USB e-licenser with that particular computer. So with that, that's all you really kind of have to do. So if you're planning on switching between different computers, consider investing in a USB e-licenser, because that gives you a lot of flexibility. So hang on just one second. My son is knocking at the door. All right, sorry about that. I apologize. And probably like many of you, I should have mentioned this earlier. My family's at home, so my son just had his school finish up a little early, so he's very excited to start his weekend. So I will have a lot more work to do after doing an index today. So, all right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas on a Hangout. Okay. So I just see about a MacBook Pro M1, upgrade my Cubase Elements 9 to 11 for Mac. When I open up Cubase, I saw just pink windows. Do you know any idea when the patch will publish? So I don't know. I haven't heard of an exact date for that. And Steinberg's been pretty careful, not to say. So I don't know if you've tried running it under Rosetta mode, but I've seen people on YouTube doing that. So you can check that out and see. I'm not sure if there's settings, but I haven't heard of any particular dates with that, when that support will be coming. Sorry. All right, so we have Soren from Sweden. All right, my timeline just kind of jumped on me. Let me just scroll back. Okay. All right. So we have Timothy from Nyack, New York. Welcome to the Hangout. Okay. So I see from Jay from Connecticut. Any chance of Steinberg adding 2 features? One, menu color templates, matching windows for color blindness, and 2, chord scale indication, allowing us to select intended mood. So I will kind of pass on for color blindness. So But if there's like particular color schemes that currently don't work for you, Jay, if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. And when you say the chord scale indication allowing us to select mood, let me just see. I'll just take a quick look. I'm not sure if that's actually something that we could set. But I know that, the guys, who pick the colors, they do like all sorts of research into this. And, we have many kind of high profile blind users also. So, but I'll just take a look, and you've probably been through the different color schemes here. So I'm not sure if like so we could set up like your different faders. Just seeing if there's, so for the channel strip. But I will pass that along, Jay, for you. So, but if you could, let me know what you mean by intended mood, that would be helpful, or exactly kind of what colors you'd like to see, being colorblind. So I'm not colorblind, but I have like horrible vision myself, so I can relate a little bit. So. Okay, so we have a question. How do I move libraries to external drive? So, when you want to, let's go ahead and give it a shot here. So let's say let's jump to this particular project. So a library, so I'm not sure if it's libraries for sample libraries or libraries for the pool. So if it is for libraries in regards to content, all you'd have to do, there's a utility called the Steinberg Library Manager. So I think this is probably what you need to do. So this way you could go to like all of your, Groove Agent kits, all your Cubase content, and then you could just click on Move and choose a folder, and then you could move all of the library content directly over to your new location, and that will keep the link with Cubase and that content together. So this is kind of like the catalyst to make sure that Cubase knows where your content is. Now there's also libraries that could be exported, from the pool. So, if you come over here and export the audio files from the pool, so let's say we go to our pool window, here we could export a pool, and we could just choose whatever folder you want. And that folder is often that is technically called a library. But if that should give you both library options, but if it's another one, let me know. Okay. Okay, so question, is it possible in any way to use multiple parts for audio alignment? It does only work if it's one audio event at a time. So let's take a quick look. So I missed this initially, and I did this like really high profile preview demo for all these amazing producers and engineers and composers in LA. And then and then I learned from the Cubase product manager that I was doing it wrong, and I made this like really clever macro and everything. So let's say we have our audio alignment. So I'll just play, and what this audio alignment is going to allow you to do is, let's say we have audio files are not quite so rhythmically in sync. So if I open my alignment panel, I could select, let's say, this first one as my reference, and then I could select multiple files here. So I have like 5 files, and I'm just going to click add selection. So I click on the plus sign, and now I choose align audio, and multiple files will be aligned. Just that easily. So again, just kind of select multiple ones and drag them over to the plus, and then you could see the 5 individual files right there that you're working with. So hopefully that will make your workflow a little easier, a little less tedious. All right, so we see it's 1 degree centigrade in Stockholm. Okay. All right, good to see Gareth on the Hangout. Hope that bass part was okay. All right, so just seeing Cubase, Jan from CubaseIndex.com. He's telling people to check out Tuesday's Hangout, which is kind of a Cubase overview. So you see a question from Gareth, if I fancy a bit of bass playing, Greg. So yeah, I always like playing bass. So I should have some free time this weekend. If you get a project to me, I'd be happy to add a quick bass line for you. Hope the last one was okay. All right. So we have a question. If I record tracks to a project I've been mixing and the plugins I've already added cause lag on my signal being tracked, if I can't freeze group effect tracks, any tips on making this easier? Okay, so while you're tracking, what I would do, so what it seems like, and this is from Paul the guitarist in Lynchburg, I believe. So I think with this, if you're kind of in the middle of mixing a project and you have a lot of effects, maybe on groups that are causing latency. And then it gets to be harder to track because of the latency. So what you could do is I would try a real quick solution would be in the transport is just to activate the constrained delay compensation. And what that will do for plugins that are causing a lot of latency, that will just simply bypass those plugins so that you could track with minimal latency issues. And then when you want to play it back, just simply turn that off. So that's really kind of the intention. So try doing the constrained delay compensation function. And then you should be able that will turn off all the plugins that cause a lot of latency. So you don't have to do it one by one by one by one by one. And then make sure that you re-enable all of the plugins. Just click right there, do your recording, and then turn it back on. All your plugins will turn on. So give that a try, Paul. Let us know how it works. Okay, so we have, is there a way I can fast forward or increase the tempo when working on a single channel wave file like speech? All right, so what you could do, there's a couple of different approaches for this. So if you wanted to speed up, what you could do is kind of, put it into, I'll just put it into a new project here, and I think I have a speech that I could add quickly. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you learned something, make sure that you hit the like button and that you also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. All right, so let me just find a speech file. I think I had some when I was doing some training at ESPN. They gave me some quick dialogue tracks for editing. So okay, so if so I'm not sure, there's could be two different approaches for this. So let's say I have dialogue here.
Todd Dixon joining us now. And
okay, so I'm just going to place this into, let's say, musical mode. So, there's kind of two different tasks for this. So one could be found, let's try just a key command. And I think if we go to shuttle play ×2, so let's say if I come and I'll just put this, let me see if I could. Okay, so, if I'm just doing it for editing tasks, I could come here.
This is, I said, Center, just moment, and that you weren't ready to answer.
So you could set up kind of key commands.
Now look at this list of all-time open wheel champions.
And, you've moved from
and then just say, okay, this is the part I need to edit.
And, you've moved
so
from
this
that
could
group
kind
of
of
three,
function like a scrubbed wheel that you could assign by keyboard shortcuts. Another method, if you wanted to add, let's say, a tempo track, and if you wanted the tempo to speed up without it changing pitch, you could just kind of draw in like a tempo change here. So you could say, okay, I want to take this.
Look at this list of all-time open wheel champions.
I'll do something maybe a little more extreme here. So let's say, let's take this. So as, I wanted it to play back, so let's say.
And, you've moved from that group of three.
So let's say at this point I wanted to start to ramp up in tempo.
And, you've moved from that group of three, which was an unbelievable group, into that group of four-time champions. It's Mario Andretti.
So I'm going to put this
Dario,
into musical mode.
The only person above you on that list, all-time open wheel champions. And, you've moved from that group of three, which was an unbelievable group, into that group of four-time champions. It's Mario Andretti, Sebastian Bourdais, Dario, and you. The only person above you on that list now is AJ. Sebastian Bourdais, Dario, and you. The only person above you on that list now is AJ.
So if you wanted to play back slower.
And you said it's a little too soon to think about that. Have you had a chance to think about the history that you laid down on Sunday at Sonoma?
Yeah, it's still a tough one, right? Like, it's for one, I don't really like to talk about myself too much, but I feel very privileged, for one, to be able to call myself a Verizon IndyCar driver.
So let's say I wanted to slow down right there.
I love, it's
so if you just wanted to kind of speed up and change the speed of the dialogue track, you could do that as well, just kind of using tempo information. So you could just kind of put it into musical mode and speed up and slow down by just entering in tempo track information. So all right, so we have a question from Gareth. Does the arranger track have any options to prevent harsh audio cuts between sections, i.e. let an event continue into the next section even if the track has been rearranged? So I think you have to kind of, with the arranger track, often kind of define, I think I have a bit of arranger track in this project, like you have to kind of, define kind of what the in and out point is so that you could, as you switch between different arrangements, that it will work. So I don't think there's any real provision. So if you haven't seen the arranger track, what this is going to allow you to do is to define different parts of a project. And you could have a part within a part, and a part within a part, within a part, within a part, if you're so inclined. And we could have all of these parts defined and drag them up and have multiple kind of play orders. So we could enable the play order track here. So I'm just going to turn this on. Instead of playing straight linearly through, what we could do is I could just come here and say, okay, let's just go through our play order. So say we want to start with the chorus. So instead of playing on, it should just jump. So let's say I'll just have this where you have our intro, and then I could skip here. So now as you do this, you know, because it needs to go from one section directly to another. So what I see some people will do, you know, so I don't think that there's any kind of like little extra buffer. So, you know, you may have to kind of make sure that the transitions are, you know, pretty clean to make that work. So, but if we choose to flatten the chain, that will take kind of the linear arrangement and turn it into, or the non-linear arrangement that was jumping all around, and then turn it into a linear. And if you need to do crossfades and, you know, do like little transitions for MIDI notes that may be starting a little late or early, you could kind of make it here when it's been kind of flattened. So, but there's no, you know, and it's, if you want it to, you know, be able to jump anywhere you want, you know, just make sure that the transitions between the parts can, you know, are clean. So I don't know of any, just take kind of a quick, so I don't think there's any special settings or functions for that. So not that I know of. So, but to make it work kind of seamlessly to go anywhere, you know, just try to make sure some of the, you know, make sure that those transitions are tight. So you see, hi Greg, what is the best and easy way to render multiple layer tracks into one audio track? So I'll just come here. All right, so let's say at this point, I'll be here, and let's say I'll just record something quickly. Okay. So I just have a MIDI part that's recorded here. So you play that back, and let's say I wanted to. I'll just add a couple other instruments here quickly. So let's say I want to do like a retro log. And I will duplicate this. All right, you'll see this should be awful sounding, maybe. Okay, and we'll duplicate it one more time. Let's just add. Let's just add a pad shop. Okay, so let's say I have these three sounds that are layered. Okay, and I wanted to turn that into one audio file easily. So, the best thing that I would do is, you could select the parts if you wanted to. Come over here to edit, to render in place. And I'll just choose that we're going to do, let's say with channel settings, we could include different effects. And I want to mix down to one audio file. I'm going to check that. And then click render. It's going to take those 3 different audio files. And this will be all of those layers, just as the audio file. So that would take, those 3 different sounds are layered together and as instruments, and then put that into one file quite easily. So let me know if that's what you wanted to do. If not, and if not, just ask the question again. Okay, so Greg, how do I get the track cursor to go back to a certain spot when tracking parts without using the loop feature? All right, so let's say I'm playing this part here. Okay, so you could, there's a couple of different approaches. So one is, as let's say, like let's say I have the loop set here on this part. Okay, I have my left and right locators set there. So if I have, this set to, let's say my re-record mode, if it was like an audio part, I could just come here. And I go to my record modes and I could just hit re-record. So if I'm tracking, I could just hit the record button. And let's say, okay, I just want it to go right back to where I was without any hassle. I just hit the record button again and it will go right back. So let's say if I turn on my metronome. And then there's different preferences where you could say, so if you go to your Cubase preferences, you could say under transport to, return to start position on stop. So if you go to your transport controls here, you could have return to start position on stop. So now if I play, and then I hit the space bar again, it goes back directly to where we started. And if I wanted to have that continue on, you could also just, deactivate that particular preference. And now when I stop later in time, it stops and we'll move on right from that point. So give those suggestions a quick call, Michael. And I think that will do the trick for you. All right, so we have CJ checking in from Las Vegas. Good to see you on the Hangout. All right, and we also see Timothy's in Vegas as well. All right, so we have JVI on the Hangout. Good to see you again. Okay, so we have a question: how to copy color from one track to another to have exactly the same color on both tracks. All right, so let's say I'll just pop here and let's just look at. So let's say I want it to be that color, and let's see if I just duplicate the track. So if you duplicate the track before you do anything, that will copy the color over. There's also, if you have a different, there's some preferences. So if you go to user interface and go to track mix console, colors. You could choose to use tracks colors, or you could choose to use previous track colors. So as I double click here to create a track, that will use the same colors. So, or if you go to, let's say I want to, I have this track as being, let's say, more red, and I want to add an audio track just below that, that will keep the same color. So try going to your preferences, and under user interface, go to track and mix console channel colors. And on the auto track change color mode, try just use previous track and see if that will kind of accomplish what you want to pretty easily. And you could probably set a keyboard shortcut just to switch the behavior of that. Okay, question. Can you have two different projects using the same project directory? This way the audio files and such could be shared, for example. So yeah, you could definitely have multiple projects within the same project folder. So you could do that. That could lead to problems later on, like when you archive projects. I've been on the resultant phone call of situations like that too many times in my career. But you could definitely do it. I've seen, entire people that, have 3 or 4 albums all in one audio file folder, so it could be fun when you go to archive and back up projects. All right. So good to see Captenergy Music on. All right. All right. Okay. Sorry, my microphone has developed a ground lift here. All right. Developed a ground problem. All right. All right. So, hey, everybody. Happy Friday. So nice of YouTube to give me a notification 28 minutes late. So you could always, make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. So that will help. Let me just see if I could fix this little buzz. All right. So I have a little ground problem today. So I'll put one hand on the mic so it won't annoy everyone. All right. So just see a comment from CJ. Greg, that was a swell video that you did on Tuesday for NAMM. A great tool to show the family how much Cubase does. So yeah, we wanted to, I think Tan May had asked for some capabilities. Tan May asked for us to do kind of a master class, and we want to do something for NAMM and something. I haven't had a chance to do too many actual dealer events. I've been doing some, but, that's kind of a typical thing I would do if you came to a seminar I did at a dealer or training. So, but I'm glad that was helpful. And hopefully if you have friends that you want to share some, hey, this is what Cubase could do, it's a good video to share with some of your friends and, make them switch to Cubase if they're not running it already. So we see, hi Greg, thanks for all the great info sharing sessions. Is it possible to assign a keyboard shortcut for the glue tool in Very Audio? Sometimes it's tough to hover in the right spot for glue. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick look. Okay. Let's take this full screen and let's go to our very audio for tuning. All right.
All at once he kissed my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away.
All right, so let's say if I so I'm just going to switch to kind of the show all smart controls. All right, so if we wanted to, so when you kind of go to the corner, now I believe that there was kind of a keyboard shortcut for this. So let's go ahead and take a quick look that might be applicable. So, so I'm not sure. I've never tried it in the editor, but let me just assign it. But under the edit, there's a glue function to kind of do this. So let's say, glue. So let me just try, see if I could assign a keyboard shortcut that's not being used. All right, so let's say if I, so this is kind of a context sensitive tool. So let's say, as if you just go to the lower right hand corner, where you see the little icon here and just go up. So I don't see, let me just see if I select this and then. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll just look to see if there's any keyboard shortcut specifically for the very audio editor. So let me just look under key commands. So it doesn't look like there's any specific glue function, but if you go to the very right-hand corner and at the bottom, you'll see that, and then just go up directly from there. So you see where you have like the corners outlined. So go to the bottom right-hand corner if you can't get the tool, and then just go straight up from there. And then that will select the glue function, so you could just be able to glue that together. So again, like, on this segment here, where you see this particular corner, and I believe this will check that this is in the default smart controls. So, I would switch the smart controls here to show all smart controls. And then you could use that as an easy barometer to switch to that particular tool quickly. So give that a try. And I think, I would probably always have the show all smart controls by default turned on, as opposed to the limited set. All right. Hi, Greg. Since upgraded to Cubase Pro 11, I don't have any presets in Retrolog, and Flux is not in Halley and Sonic. So I think if you go to the Steinberg download manager, make sure. So a lot of people may not, if you did the update from 10.5 or an earlier version, make sure that the installer is broken down into into individual components so that you don't have to have like a 30 gigabyte download. So once it's broken down into the individual components, a lot of people say, okay, I don't need to do Hallian Sonic or Retrolog because I have that already, but there's new versions for each of those plugins, and make sure that you have those new versions installed as well. But if not, you could, if you have those particular libraries, you could just go to the library on your computer's hard disk, right click, and open with the Steinberg Library Manager. And you could see here, just go to Flux. See if your Flux is listed here, for instance. And at that point, you could, just kind of, look at the details of exactly where that file is. But if you see like flux.vst sound file, right click on it and open it, or double click on it, and that will open it into the Steinberg Library Manager, and that will manage all the different content for you. All right, so I just see a question. Does the Cubase community have a Discord channel? So Jazz Dude, and I'm sure he'll reply to this because he's always so good. But he has kind of an unofficial Cubase Discord channel with all sorts of great resources and tutorials, and all sorts of great Steinberg and Cubase goodness. So we have a question from Peter Lawson. Hi, Greg. Does Mac have better audio output than PC? Please explain. No, there's no real difference. It could be that maybe the onboard audio interface might be better than some really inexpensive laptop audio interface, but I think it's, the ones that Apple uses are the same ones that are in most PC laptops too, that you can kind of see it when you're on like a boot camp partition. And the audio quality and processing is identical between the two, so there really is no sound quality difference between them. All right, so just seeing Jay's comment, for the sake of organization, being able to opt and on-off for collapsible mix tracks, not necessarily in a folder per se, but similar dynamic expandable closer could be a great workflow. So, play around with the, with the different visibility configurations as well. So. All right, a question. Hi, Greg. Can you explain how individual channel latency affects a mixdown? Does it matter if I'm not recording anything? And should I adjust channels delay when simply playing back and arranging? So when you go, the audio engine inside of Cubase will compensate for all the latency, for all the processing. Anytime you add an effect plugin, you add an EQ, all those things that will incorporate some latency will be taken care of. So you don't have to do anything with that. So once you go down to mix down a file, the individual channel latency, you may hear it as you record, like if you have effects, a lot of effects kind of within the signal flow, you may hear the latency, but once the audio is in the project and it's playing back, that track is going to be latency compensated for. So you don't have to do anything special. It'll all be kind of taken care of you kind of automagically, if you will. All right, good to see Matthias from Hamburg. I hope to get back to Hamburg soon when we can travel again and things are safer. I miss going to Hamburg. All right. Okay. Okay, just going through. Sorry, my chat field jumped on me again here. Right, just scrolling through. Okay, so I think I'm back to where I was. Okay, so just see question, Greg. 90% of the time I do voiceovers. I don't feel the compression I do compared to others like Peter Baker, etc. Please explain with examples. Okay, so let me just let's see if I have. May not have a lot of voiceover stuff that is not compressed. Let me just see. I may have a video that I haven't put compression on my voice. Let me see if I could import that and show some compression. So you may have to watch another tutorial video, sorry. All right, let me just do a new project here quickly. Okay, so this will be kind of unprocessed. And it may seem weird because it's just going to be my voice. And I usually try to talk so I don't have to compress so much, but let's take a look. Okay, so the sampler track 2 and some of it's okay, so this is just a little bit, just a recording from a video, so it's not so compressed. Okay, so if you want to do like really heavy compression, so I'm not familiar with like Peter Baker's compression stuff, but we'll go ahead and just kind of show, and I'll just do it with the built-in channel strip. So let's just come here. Let's take a look at the sampler track 2 and some of its creative uses and applications. When we look at the sampler track, we can see that the user interface has been updated so that parts are more obvious whether they're active or inactive. So, you know, we can drag audio from our project window from Media Bay, or even MIDI information is being routed. So you can see that's getting squashed pretty well. The sampler track, and immediately play it. If I wanted to normalize within the sampler, so track, without that, I could click on this icon. And we could trim the sample by selecting a range and clicking on the trim. So it's often when you have stuff that's like really kind of super soft and then loud and soft and loud, and, you know, trying to regulate that. So like, you know, as I do like bass recordings, I try to keep everything as regular as possible so that, you know, someone hopefully doesn't have to spend hours compressing my signal to compensate for my lack of awareness of volume consistency. So I may not have such a perfect track, like a voiceover track, that to be compressed, but, you know, you could do, you know, just kind of play with kind of the, you know, channel strip here, and there would be, you know, we'll try some other new playback algorithms for different qualities. So say if I just want to go to different inserts, best, extreme, or vintage, which is kind of mimics some of the classic 12 samplers. So if we want to go
working
through
with drums, we could drag our drum loop directly into a sampler track, and we could choose to have this loop in different manners. So if I wanted to play this back in a continuous loop,
so that's just kind of, a subtle compression, but again, it's just really to kind of, if you don't notice the compression, sometimes, people will use compression as a very specific effect, like on drums, to really kind of just squash them. But a lot of times I wouldn't necessarily do super heavy compression on dialogue. It should almost be where you don't, if you're not noticing the compression, you're probably doing something right. That's how I would think of it. So, but if you have an example that you want to email me a link to, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it, and I could use it in the next hangout on Tuesday. All right, so a question from Hamburg. All right, so we have multiple people from Hamburg. How can I deactivate or uninstall all third-party plugin effects by single command in case of audio performance issues caused by 9 Steinberg plugins? So, it's probably the easiest way to do it is when you start Cubase. You can hold down Alt-Control-Shift, on Windows, or Command-Option-Shift on Mac. And then you'll get to the point where you'll get like a safe startup mode. So let's see if I could show it here on the Cubase Elements. So as soon as I go to start my Cubase Elements, I'll hold down that key command, and you'll get this safe mode. And here you'll have an option to deactivate all third-party plugins. So at that point, you could just click there. And then when you start Cubase, that will, because once the plugin is kind of instantiated and in memory, it could already be causing problems. But if you just hold down again, Alt-Control-Shift or Command-Option+Shift, and right after you double-click on the Cubase icon, you could just start Cubase without any of those third-party plugins. So that's the best approach to do it, because that will make sure that it's going to be, not influencing other components if they're already kind of loaded into the system. So just start it in safe mode, and then you should be, that's the easiest way to do that, to kind of get rid of a problematic plugin. So I was just helping Zed and Zed's team with that yesterday. So, yep. So see, my son's already watching some Legos, and so his weekend has started already. So he's lucky. Okay, so question, I bought Cubase Pro recently. Now I don't need my Elements, which I bought earlier. Can I give my Elements key to another person so that he would be able to use it legally? So, if your Cubase Elements is on the same key, you're able, whoever has that key could run Cubase Elements. So it's the license is on that key. What you choose to do, there may be something in the end user license agreement, but if you lend it to someone or give it to someone, then they could run it. But if you've upgraded, so one thing to be aware of is if you had Cubase Elements and then you upgrade it to Cubase Pro, you may not have a separate license, because what was your Cubase Elements license is now turned into a Pro license. But if you had, the license on 2 separate USB e-licensors, whoever is in possession of that particular e-licenser with the Elements license, they'll be able to run the Cubase Elements. All right. All right, so we got a revelation today for Gareth of moving the library manager, the move function. So I feel good and did my job today. All right, so Gareth has to make sure he hits the like button. So make sure you do that. Okay. So I just see clarification on the audio alignment. Thanks for the alignment answer, but I mean, if one audio event has a cut, it doesn't work. That's what I meant. So if you are dealing with a lot of stuff that, let's say, has a lot of cuts, you know, what I would do. So say if I was doing like an audio alignment, and one of the parts had just a, you know, whole slew of different cuts, you know, I would just, you know, select all those events. You know, first I would just take this, you know, if you're, you know, need to go back, I would duplicate the track, take the duplicate track and just go to bounce selection. So just go to bounce selection right there and choose to replace events. And now that's, you know, you have your original file and then you have the file kind of that's the same exact information that you could do alignment on. And if you need to go back to the original, you could do that. And what's kind of cool about this, you could even say, let's do a new version and then just drag that over top. So I will just drag, make a copy of that. So then I could have, you know, one version here of the edits and one version that's going to be the actual file there. So, you know, you could do it with, you know, track version. So, and let's see if there's, I think we could maybe even make that a little easier. So let's say I'll just get rid of this particular track. Okay, so let's say I'll duplicate this version. I'll just start with this one. So I'm going to choose duplicate version. All right, and now let's say I've cut a whole slew of times. Okay, so at this point I will do my bounce selection. So replace, and then if I wanted to, I could just go back to the original part, or, you know, so, you know, you can play around with like track versions as well. So, okay, good to see that Gareth liked the bass part I recorded for him. I try not to go too fretlessy on it for you, but it was a fun project. I enjoyed playing that. Okay. Okay. So yeah, if you want to tell me like, so Gareth, if you want to send me like the name of the songs again that you want, I saw there's some other folders, but we could do that. All right. Okay. So I see question, is this color fade a Cubase 11 feature? Does it also work in Cubase 10? So, I'm not sure if it's like with the color fade, but I don't think there's any differences. This is from Franz. So the color fade is Cubase 11 features. I don't think it will that anything was changed in Cubase 11 over 10 in that regard. But if you get, I'm not sure what exact part the fade you're talking about, but okay, question. Okay, how to make font in MIDI editing window easier to read with more contrast. So let's go ahead and take a look at, I think I have some MIDI parts in here. So sometimes, you know, like the font, so it's a, you know, I've seen sometimes where, you know, particular functions may be a bit demurred until they're selected. But let's see if we could take a look. I'm not sure. All right. Hang on just one second. My son's knocking. All right, so let's see if we could change maybe the intensity of the font there. I'm not sure, but so I'm not sure if we could change those. So I don't think that's changeable, but I'll pass it on to the team. So. Okay, just reading through comments. See some comments about the mix console fader colors, and yeah, that did come in 10.5. We see Gareth liked it because he's into interior design. So. Okay. Question: is there a possibility to figure out which libraries are included with Cubase Pro when I open up the Steinberg Library Manager? I can't distinguish. Let me clear my voice real quick. I can't distinguish between owned and non-owned libraries extensions. So if you want to know what comes with Cubase Pro, you know, so if we go to the Steinberg Download Assistant, so let me just, I think I have it. And then you just look in the Cubase 11 download section. All right, and of course, it has to do an update as we do this. All right, so once you're in the Cubase section, you go to Cubase Pro 11. These are all of the different content that come with your Cubase 11 license. So this is kind of all the different licenses that are available that come as part of Cubase here. So you could just download all of those. And if you're in, you know, Cubase 10, you could see, you know, with earlier versions, you could see, you know, the content won't be kind of broken down. But some of the new ones, there's like 6 new libraries. Noir, Night Call, I think Hard Knocks, Bloom, I think those are version 11 specific, and the other ones are, I think there were 6 of them total of the loop libraries. But that's how you could tell which ones come with Cubase pretty easily. And I think if you do the library manager, let's take a look in there as well, that you might be able to distinguish, what ones come with Cubase right there, just by clicking on the Cubase icon here. And then there's, other libraries that are available. But I think that will show you, let me just see if some of these. So I think these might be all coming from all part of Cubase directly there. Hi, Greg. So we have a question. Hi, Greg. Last I used Cubase, it wasn't possible to scroll in a mixer without accidentally adjusting faders. Is it possible now? So yeah, you could do it. So, you could obviously kind of grab the bottom here. And I think if you just... Let's see if there's, let me just zoom in here. So, if you kind of hover in different parts. So, if you just want to just go to the bottom, you could just scroll just like that. And I think there might be a keyboard shortcut. Let me just... that there's maybe a key modifier you could use with your mouse to do it as well. Let me just try to full. But, you could also just use your left, right keys. Or... But, if you just go directly to the bottom, you can scroll just there like that quite easily without worrying about your adjusting fader positions. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. In Logical Editor, I'm unable to type in note name instead of the note number and parameter of the action section. So let's take a look. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to... All right, so let's say value 1. I'll just come here. So let's say I type in G2. All right, so it looks like it might be doing the same for me. I'll bring that to the attention. One thing that you can also do is if you have this up, just hit the actual key on your computer keyboard. So a lot of people don't know that you could just kind of hit the key and you could set the value once that is selected. But I think I can see what you're talking about. So if I hit F, let me just see if I do capital. Yeah, it looks like it's ignoring the letter part, but try hitting just the key on your MIDI controller, and that will accept that as an input source. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Sorry, that could be annoying. So just say comment, arranger mode, like using song mode in most workstation keyboards. You make loops in time together. Yeah. All right, so I see Franz has never seen to play Order the Arranger track before. So yeah, it's a great feature. So make sure you kind of check that out. So I see comment from it says, this is the great and bad thing about Cubase. It can do most everything and has been doing this stuff for years, but people don't know about all the features, So that's why we do these hangouts and just, to give all sorts of tips and tricks, because sometimes, features implemented 20 years ago become very relevant in workflows later, So, but, it's hard to necessarily show like like a lot of times documentation and manuals can show you how a particular function works, but it may not show you applications of that function. So that's why we do lots and lots of tutorials and video content at Steinberg. So. See that Pablo saw that in my project list, we had the Voodoo Moon in there. So, and probably under recent projects. So there it is. So it's a little project worked on in conjunction, I think, with Michael teams and Pablo and with Gareth. So it's kind of fun to just be a bass player again. So. All right. The only thing I think that Cubase doesn't do is the Ableton style trigger grid loop system, but I bet that'll be in the next upgrade as pop-up. So you can, there's keyboard shortcuts that you could set to do different. So if you want to trigger your arranger chains, so if you come directly here to your key commands, in the arranger track, you could trigger the different arranger commands from different keyboards or from different, go into your studio setup. Let's say you want your generic remote to say, okay, I want it this particular, I'll just do a quick learn. So I can say, let's learn that note. And I think we could do it from here as well. So say command, and let's go to, I'll just do the command. And go to arranger. And then you could trigger event 1, and then trigger event 2. So as you do this, you could set up generic remotes to go between your different sections as well. So see Gareth mentioning that Franz has had his revelation of the day. So, all right. So seeing, all right. So I may have given Gareth a new melody. So, all right. Okay, so Gareth wants everyone to solo and hit the like button. So, so I just see from Danny, hi Greg, do you speak French a little bit? So I studied in high school. I took Spanish. So I have 4 years of Spanish. I don't use it much. I can understand it, but I didn't study French, so I'm sorry. I'm just kind of the quintessentially ignorant American, so only speaks mostly English kind of American. Okay, so just going through comments. All right, so we have Seiko, I believe, or Sako from Montreal. Welcome to the Hangout. Hi, Greg. Can squasher be used to lengthen, enhance the body sustain of a live drum snare? So what I would use for that, I mean, you probably could kind of, squash it pretty easily. Let's just jump back to like a live snare track. Okay, so I'll just mute one of them. So let's say, so let's go over here to dynamics and let's try. I haven't really tried squasher so much. The tool that I would use for that particular type of thing, and you could, I'm sure there's so much tweaking that you could do in Squasher, but I would use the envelope shaper. This is kind of the anti-suck plugin for drums. So as I want to adjust the length, and let's say the release. So if I want my snare to be really tight, but I'll just put it on kind of everything here quickly, just so you can. I'll just put on like a drum bus. So let's say I'll just add a group track to this. And you could actually just do this straight from the channel under tools. You have the envelope shaper here. So let's say we want more attack. And this is for all the drums. Or you want it really tight, like mid 70s. So where I see so many people using so many different types of to bypass that. So, even just kind of taking the levels, being the same, just turning that on. So it's many of my friends that do lots of drum mixing, it's like their secret weapon. And to be able to kind of take your drums and beef them up, It's when the drummer says, yeah, make my drum sound like John Bonham. And you're like, yeah, play like him. That would help. So so I would like to see an automatic sync option feature for all audio, like Ableton does automatically, and perfectly great for doing remixes, so you could do that, super fast inside of Cubase as well, but Cubase has a lot of, you just have to, enable musical mode. So if you are doing this in Cubase, let's say I'll just revert this project quickly. So let's say I'm playing along here and I want to do like a quick remix. All right, so once I have kind of, if you go to your pool window, you can see that these all have their original tempo and they're all in musical mode. And we can do this on the project itself. So I could just come right over here and say, okay, let's make this 112 beats a minute. Let's make it 144. And I can say, okay, let's just grab a drum loop. So if I wanted to, I could just kind of double click. I could audition that loop in real time. And I could just say, okay, let's just take this. I'm just going to check, see if I have this on. I could probably have it snapped to grid, but I may have it just off. So I'll just take all these and. So I'm just going to drag this over. So I'll just hit J so I can have it snap to the grid. All right. So now. So any loop that I just kind of throw in. We just find like a quick. So I could just kind of drag that loop and place it into musical mode. And as soon as it's. So once, your different tracks are in musical mode, you could just kind of drop it right in. And those will automatically just kind of play, perfectly in tempo with the project. So I'll just drop back here. All right, so let's say we're going to drop this right at the downbeat. And I'm going to use... Sorry, I had it set to our groove quantize. So now when I come, so any kind of just different loops that you throw in can automatically just match right up and align to the grid. So anything that you want to do, and even if, where Cubase does really well is when we have like something that has varying tempo. So I will just let me just remove this track. So say we have audio that's not really matched to a grid. Cubase can do a tempo map, create the tempo map of the audio that's varying in tempo. And now I'll just say, okay, let's. And I could have this audition kind of in project tempo if you want. So I'll just kind of drop this right onto its own track. Let's start it on the grid. So now place that into musical mode. And as this tempo is fluctuating of the original track, it'll speed up and slow down. The tempo of the other tracks as well. To just automatically align. So you experiment with the musical mode. If you haven't, it could be a big epiphany for you. All right, so we see Ambient Dave has discovered quick controls, so that's good. All right, so Michael Teams wants everyone to hit the like button, so, and Pablo is adding everyone should smash it, so don't hit your computer monitor too hard. I see a nice comment or a great comment from Jazz Dude. If someone really knows most of Cubase's features, he can achieve a very fast workflow. That's what most people recognize watching the pros and live streams. Okay. So we see Michael Teams is going for ice cream. He's probably already finished it. Okay, so just see from Jay. So I did see an email come through on my watch. So I'll read over it about the chords and mood coloring schemes. So as I just see, where can I buy a dedicated backlit Cubase keyboard? So I think I'm one of the people that just uses like the normal. I just do more with muscle memory of keyboard shortcuts. So, but I think Editor's Keys makes a lot of different keyboards for different programs. I think they have one for Cubase. I know people also just sell stickers as well. So, all right. So from JVI, hi Greg, I'm going bananas. I'm doing analyze tempo detection. I have what I want roughly, but some beats are off. If I correct this, the tempo dots go mad. Doing Control Z once fixes this. So, once you do a tempo detection, so let's just go back a couple steps here. What I would do is, so we go to your project and we do a tempo detection. So, it's not going to figure out every single, there will be some parts that can just throw it off. I mean, it does a great job. But if you find that it gets off, like maybe on a drum fill, so let's say, okay, I do this, and I close this window. So it takes you into what's called the time warp tool. And what the time warp tool is going to allow you to do is, as you listen to it, you may go, okay, as we work with this, this is where the downbeat should be. So what you could do is actually just move accordingly here. So just move like the measure or the beat accordingly. And what it'll do is actually just do a reanalysis from that point on. So that's why it kind of places you into this tool mode, so that if you, just play back, and if you need to make tweaks, that you can. So that's why it kind of puts you into the time warp tool by default. So, but if you still have problems, if you want to send me a download link to clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to take a look at it for you. Okay, so I see question: is there any way we can do installment for Cubase Pro 11? So if you have the license, you could go to the Steinberg download assistant, and we showed that a little earlier. So once you're here, you could just download the Cubase 11 version and just do the program installation. So let me just punch this in really quickly. Sorry, I have my caps lock on. So if you just go here and then you could see, the main application, that's the required part. You could just, download that and install it once you have the license, like on your e-licenser. But if I'm misunderstanding, let me know, Kevin. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so I think we're okay. You see that Gareth will be moving projects or his content to another external folder, kind of all the libraries. So. Okay, so I see a question from Brian Sawyer Sr. Hey, Greg, great job at NAMM show. Thanks. That was fun to do that. We tried to get through a lot of information quickly. Quick question. I asked the last time about saving to MP3. It does not show up in my list. Another issue is that when I tried to input an MP3, it can't see it in files. So make sure that you have, and if you want to send me just a screenshot, and you could email it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. But sometimes people come here and they want to do a save as, and they don't see MP3 as a list. And what you have to do is export and choose audio mix down. And I think last time you said that you only had WAV and AIF, but you want to choose MPEG 1 layer 3, and that will allow you to export as an MP3. So let me just add this to our queue. So, and I'll just add, so if I wanted to come here, so I will export this to my desktop, and then we'll try to import it. Okay, so this will now create an MP3 file. I'll start my queue export. And we can choose our sample rate, the bit rate of the compression. All right, so now we've exported that. I will now go to import. And again, it's not like open, but make sure you do an import audio file. I'll go to my desktop and we'll see probably make sure I put it there. All right, just gonna check, make sure I saved it to the right folder. All right, hang on, wait. All right. Let's see if it went. Let me just see if it's in the project folder for the jazz. Just find a file folder really quickly. Sorry about this. Okay, let me just take a quick look, see where put it into the documents. Okay, I'm just going to open up my Finder independently here real quick, see if I see it. So, but so if you want to do just a quick screenshot, make sure that you see the, if you could send a screenshot and see if you have the MP3 kind of inserted there, let me know. But I've done it a number of different times. I may just try one more quick time here. Let me just see if it's under. So here's our MP3 file. So I'll just go ahead and select that and we'll import it right in. Sorry for my brain cramp. And there's the MP3 file that was imported directly in. So it seems to be working on my end, but if you could, again, send me, Brian, if you want to send me just to see what it looks like and indicate again. I think you mentioned previously that you're on Cubase Pro. But, if you could just let me know the exact version. But if you could maybe just email me a screenshot to clubcubase@steinberg.de and just with maybe this dialogue open and see if that does the trick for you. Or if you could send that, that'd be great for me to see. All right, so just see a comment. Thanks for answering my question about channel latency, Greg. This is why I love these streams. I always get a reply, simple, to the point, the way I need it. That's good. Hope it's helpful. So for Michael Teams, Greg, set up Cubase 11 for external effects, please. All right, so let's say I have maybe a lexicon reverb or a distressor compressor. So I could go to my audio connections and we'll see external effects. So I want to use my lexicon reverb. So I will, or let's say I have a distressor here. So I'm going to say, this is going in and out of this input and this output. So what we're going to do is basically connect this to our audio interface. And our audio interface will, so it's going to the output, an output from your audio interface to the input of the unit. the output of the unit to the input of the audio interface. So once that is set up, I can now go to my inserts and I will see under external plugins, I can say, okay, I want to use my distressor. There's this little icon here for measure delay. So once I click on that, that will ping the system. So that will send like a little kind of little like type of sound, measure the latency of that path, and automatically compensate for any delay for outboard gear. So that's really all you have to do for external effects. So I still have some lexicons that I like, that I could sell and not get any money for. So I have them configured in my studio for external plugins. So we're just saying Michael Teams is indicating to Gareth that Hamburg was a blast when I was there last. So it's a wonderful city. Probably been there like 20 times. So I always feel like I get my batteries charged going to the Steinberg office. So hi, is there any possibility to change the main tuning of 440 hertz, for example, to 442 to 443 for classical music process in Cubase Pro? Thanks in advance. So what I've seen a lot of people do, you can, record the audio at any sample rate, with any tuning precision that you want. Where it could come into play can be dealing with, different intonation issues. So, if you're doing tuning, so, if you're going to be doing tuning, I see a lot of people do is just, if they are, and I get the whole, I know like Stevie Wonder is definitely like, he's, very specific that A is 442 for him and, is perfect pitch. So, if what I've seen people do also is just kind of to take the audio here, if you need to do a lot of kind of very audio editing tasks, is just to come over here and, you could select kind of the overall tuning here and you can say, okay, I'm at 442 or I want it to be, but the tuning could be set to 4, the musicians have tuned to 442 and everything. All my tuning here for editing is going to be at 440. I've seen a lot of people that will just kind of do the tuning here, and adjust the fine tuning. And this is by cents and kind of do an offset in the fine tuning. And then you could edit kind of at normal 440 hertz within the Very Audio editor. So give that a try of adjusting the fine tuning. So you could go, -2 up 2 or 3. And that way the whole project is kind of the basis for the project is now kind of offset when you do tuning. Okay. Okay. How can I change reverb and chorus globally? So let's say, if I have, here, I have everything going into one reverb in this particular project. So let's say we're kind of playing along here. I'll just revert this because I've probably done some horrific processing and out of respect to the composer here. All right. And the performer. So let's say, my piano is going through the same reverb as is the vocalist. So these are all going into my reverb return channel. So if I wanted to globally change the reverb, I could just, come. So I can say, okay, let's just browse. then everything that's going out to this particular reverb is automatically going to be changed. So, and you could do that for, so if you go to your effects channel track and then open up the inserts, you could then change the plugin itself in context of the mix. So you see, Greg, I hope you back up your computer. I would hate for you to lose all your projects. I have them kind of, I have like several computers with the projects on. So I kind of, once I have a project that's really good for showcasing something, I have it stored in multiple places as well, and a lot of hard drives. So, but yeah, I try to be pretty diligent about that. So. Okay, question. Whenever I upgrade Cubase, I always have to spend an age refining plugins, audit around my PC, and lose other things. Is there a way to make the new version sync with all previous version settings? The easiest way to do it, I found, is just to, if you go under the edit menu and go to Profile Manager, and you could save, once you have everything set up, just export a profile. And then you could just simply take that particular profile and import it into the later version. So, that way your presets that you've made, your plugin collections, your macros, your key commands, your preferences, all those different things are automatically stored within your profile. All right, so I see. Hi, Greg. I would like to have a soft limiter whilst tracking vocals. Can you demonstrate? I'm not really set up to actually track on the computer that you're seeing. It's a pretty convoluted setup to make the Hangouts happen, but I don't really have a way. Let me just see if I have. I may be able to plug a bass in really quick. Bear with me just for a second. All right, so just see if I could get, I'll just do a quick new project here. Let me see which input I'm connected to. Okay. Okay, let me just get the right interface configured here. Okay, so it says I would like to have a soft limiter whilst tracking vocals. So I don't have a mic set up, but if so you could record, like as you play. We could, have an insert effect, and this insert effect of the limiter will, you'll hear it, but it doesn't actually affect the signal. So the signal kind of gets played through the limiter. So as I do this. And And we'll see. And this could also be dependent upon, so say if I wanted to. Okay, so I'm probably in direct monitoring mode. So let me just go to my studio setup here and select this. Okay. So, but the thing that you want to do, maybe, I would try to avoid tracking with a limiter. I would do limiters like for kind of like the mixing stage. But if you come to the input channel where your microphone is connected, here you could have, if you wanted to apply the effect, at this point you could say, okay, now I wanted to put on a limiter and affect the input source. But you may not actually, So I would try to avoid putting a limiter during tracking. I know some people will put compression on, but, it's like one analogy I heard is you can't unburn the steak, once something has kind of been done. But, if you wanted to apply effects, and embed them in the file itself, you would just kind of put on the input channel. So if I wanted to, put on, let's say if I just want to put on like a chorusing on, I'm not sure, let's see, should be kind of hearing some of the changes, but once you have it on the input channel, that will be embedded in the audio file. But if it's actually on the channel itself, it's not going to be embedded in it. But with limiters, I would choose to probably put it after, not during tracking. I would just make sure that you have your level set, because you don't necessarily want it to be to affect kind of the dynamic range of the original signal, if at all possible. Okay, so I just see from Tom, Greg, don't mean to beat a dead horse in reference to Silicon Max. To run a Rosetta, it has to be 10.5 rate. 11 doesn't work at all for me. So I haven't tried it because I don't have a Silicon Mac, but I'll see if I could get some more information on that. But, I'll see if I get a clarification, just because I don't have one of the new Macs. We have to get like one computer for every 2.5 years, corporate-wise. Okay. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so Greg, please drop your email at the end of the live session. Would love to send you an email, the voiceover sample. So you could always send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de, and it's also in the description for the Hangout videos as well. Okay. Okay, so you see a question. Hi, Greg. How to replace events in a range window by copying some events, Control D on top of them. So let's say if we have a loop and we want it sounds like it's maybe wanting to replace a particular audio files. So let's say if I have an audio file used multiple times on a particular project. So I will come here, let's make a copy. And if I want to replace it with another file, we could just take a file and copy it over top and hold down the Shift key. And we'll get this little message that says, do you want to modify all events that refer to the same material? Say all, and that will replace that particular audio file with the new audio file just straight over top. So, and all of them will just immediately be kind of just replaced. So it's just fine. So come here, hold down, so drag over, hold down the shift key, and then that will just replace the audio files in your project window. So you see, hi Greg, what's the frame on Cubase Pro 11 trial? So the Cubase Pro 11 trial is available, and it is for 30 days. So I believe, so 30 days from that. So. Okay, so we have a question. Hi from Barcelona. My USB licenser is not listed in my hardware in my computer, so when I want to extract it from my computer, I just unplug it. Is it going to cause my USB-E licenser not to work properly? So, you know, connecting and reconnecting the USB-E licenser doesn't affect its ability, to function or have license. It's kind of the intention of it. So, but if you're not seeing it in the computer, make sure that you have the e-licenser control center installed. But it'll work. I take the same USB e-licensers and, like pre-COVID when I was doing, 100, 120 flights a year, I would use the same e-licensers and connect them multiple times a day. Okay, so you see, has Cubase Artist a plugin that shows which EQ scale is occupying a track besides seeing the highest peak in the EQ spectrum? So as we go to look at your EQs, let me just jump back, let's say to this project. So if I'm looking, I believe this is the same in Artist as well. So, if you look just right here in the background, and this is our vocal. So, as we adjust our EQ, we see the frequency spectrum here. So when you say EQ scale, so you could see kind of the frequencies here. As you kind of hover over, there's also, I'm not sure if this is it might be in Pro only, but if you go to the Supervision plugin, so let's say if I wanted to just switch this particular plugin to like a spectrum bar. So let's say if I'm here, you could actually kind of see the notes as well. So that's another way. But, just being able to kind of, and especially as you hover over particular frequencies. So if you wanted to see like what's going on in the vocals, so it may not show you like that it's in G major or, C major or, A minor, depending on the frequencies. It's going to show you the frequencies that are present in that particular. But when you say EQ scale, so it's not going to necessarily show like a musical scale. Okay, hi Greg. How would you set up to change reverb and chorus of a general MIDI file globally across all tracks? Okay, so if it's going to be for a MIDI file, so generally the MIDI files, let me see if I come over here. There's I think. So generally the MIDI file is going to be, I want to say controller 91 and 93 for, I don't have any like standard MIDI files, but if I wanted to, let me just see if there's one of the, generally it's going to be within the standard MIDI file. So if you come over here, okay, so for the MIDI file itself, so if it's a standard MIDI file, there's going to be, and this will probably carry, so there's kind of two extensions of general MIDI. There's GS by Roland and XG by Yamaha. So you could try, so it may not, so try going to the MIDI plugins to track control, and often these will work for MIDI files. And let's say if you go to like XG2, here you could see which reverb is actually being employed by the particular, so which chorusing effect and which reverb effect. So I would try that. So go to select the MIDI track, go to track controls, and then try to, one of the presets that you'll see will actually, you'll see GS, and this may not allow you to switch the reverb type, but the XG2, and it could be, depending which, these will more than likely will map. So, but they are, within the MIDI file itself, there's no real specific information, but it's going to be just a standard MIDI controller, I think 91, 93, but I could very likely be mistaken on that. So, but check that out under the track controls. And if you go to XG2, there you could set different reverbs and rooms for your MIDI file, for your playback device. So that's if it's in a hardware piece, if it's going to be in something like, if it's playing back the MIDI file from Howling and Sonic, you would just do, which will do it by default. So this will be controlling an external module that's playing back. But if it's going to be inside of Howling and Sonic SE, so if you just import a MIDI file, you get a Howling and Sonic SE, and when you go to, so let's say we just load up a quick, like, I'll just do, all right, so let's say a GM sound here. So I have an accordion. And now you can go to your effects. And once you have kind of like your different aux effects here, you could choose that you want these to be different reverbs or chorusing directly here. So the plugin itself will have those different reverb and chorusing as well as other options. So if the MIDI file is being played back through Howling and Sonic SE, you could just do the effects there. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Okay, reading through questions. See some people going getting dinner, so probably in Europe time. Okay. All right, so Roshni Music Studio wants everyone to like the video. So. Okay, what do I do if I'm getting cannot add more tracks? The audio track count is at the limit. So, the limit can be if you have like one of the lighter versions, like an LE, AI, or Elements, will have a fixed number of tracks. So, there is a limit. I think, Elements is 64 tracks of audio. So you could mix down tracks, but if you have the full version, there's no limit to how many tracks that you can have. Okay, so, you may want to upgrade your software if you haven't done that. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Every time I got Pro Tools bounce files to mix, they are imported in wrong speed and pitch. I already tried to convert if needed option and did not work. Please help. So I would make sure, it definitely seems, maybe the person that you're getting the files from is indicating the sample rate incorrectly. So I would try to, make sure that, it's pretty easy to, for people to think they're working at one sample rate and give you files from another. So I've seen that a lot. So I would make sure that all of the files are kind of, listen to it and, try changing the sample rates and see if they're actually, lining up to what you have. So I would do that. I don't think there's anything specific, if it's always from the same person, maybe they're doing something wrong or adding the wrong metadata in the file or something, but it's, pretty straightforward. Usually just a sample rate problem with that. And if you have a file you want to send to me, feel free to. Hi, Greg. With the new Scale Assistant, is it true that you have to enable record to use it? No. So you could do, you can have it on record, but let's say I'm in this track and I'm in the Scale Assistant. So I'll open up my Scale Assistant here and I'm in the key of G. So now we could say, okay, so you could say snap pitch editing. So now I could only move pitches like up and down within the scale. So we're not in record. There is the snap live input function. So, if you wanted to, only be able to play notes within the scale, you could do that. But you could also just choose to, so let's say I'm in the key of G and let's say I move this to a C sharp. You could also just choose to quantize pitches, and that will automatically map all notes that are out of key directly into the scale. And you could do all that without being in record. And there's also kind of where you could choose to only see the pitches from the Scale Assistant, so that as you do edits and you move it up and down, it'll be within the key. So you could also kind of filter the views up here as well. So question from Jay, any new talks of native Nuendo/Cubase touchscreen workflow implementations to prevent need for third-party interface software from Zendaw, Metagrid, and others? So, I haven't heard of any, but, a lot of times, there's projects and development stuff going on all the time, and they know that I talk to people, so I'm not privy to a lot of early information. So, but I'll pass that on. I've mentioned it to them in the past as well. Okay. Okay, we see Ambient Dave, who's kind enough to attend a hangout on his birthday. With happy birthday again. That he's learning lots again, and great. He's discovering new things. That's great. That's why we do these. Okay. Hey, Greg, for team work tracks, I go play MIDI data with a synth sound. How do I send this in one file? So just the MIDI data with the synth and the sound I play on the MIDI data. Okay. So, all you have to do, if you choose to, solo, so if I come here and, you could just, if it's just going to be a MIDI part, so if it's just going to be a MIDI file, and if you're sending it to someone else that's running Cubase, if you want it to open up the same exact instrument, you could take that MIDI track here and choose to export it as so if it's a software instrument, there's two approaches. You could always send a MIDI file, and like I see a lot of people in the Notepad data will just say, okay, we'll just come here, say, okay, we're going to have the Notepad, and they will just, even come here and take, within the Notepad, I use this instrument, this patch, just like a little description. And, you could export that as a text file and save that as a MIDI file. If it's a virtual instrument you're handing off to someone that's smart enough to be running Cubase, you could export it as a what's called a MIDI loop. So if it's an instrument track. So let's say I'll add a quick instrument track here. Okay, and at this point, if I have this part here, I'm going to just get a file to export and do a MIDI loop. Now, the advantage of the MIDI loop is it has the part, plus it has all the information on what instrument plays it back. But standard MIDI files also work, I think you could solo the part and just do an export MIDI file if it's someone that's not running Cubase. But if you're doing instrument tracks and the other people you're sending it to has Cubase, just export it as a MIDI loop, and then you could just drag and drop. Or you could send them to Project and they could import tracks from Project, and you select the project accordingly, and you say, oh, I just really wanted to import, these particular tracks. So hi, Greg. How can I make it so that when it's from Nick, good to see you on a Hangout. I'm just going to put my bass down real quick. Bear with me just for a second. Hang on. It's a heavy bass that's sitting on my lap in the way of my microphone. Okay, so I'm back. Sorry. Okay, so how to make it so when I double click on a MIDI track, I see all the controllers that are being used. It seems I always have to go and make them visible after opening. Okay, so let's say if I just wanted to click here, I could just say, let's all right, so let's say if I just want to come here, say show used controllers. So let me just see if that's a keyboard shortcut option. So if you don't know that, so a lot of times you may just click here. So let's say I just want to show velocity only. Okay, but let's see if we could. And I think that might stick per track, but let's see if we could assign it to a keyboard shortcut. So there's a show use controllers under MIDI. So you could just simply have a keyboard shortcut for that. So I'll just make one here just to test it. So to say show use controllers. So now when I'm in a MIDI editor, I could just do show use controllers just right there. So go to, so I don't know a way to automatically do that as a preference. I don't remember a preference with that, but you can assign a keyboard shortcut that you could trigger to do that. But I'll just... Yeah, I don't know of a preference to do that, but just assign a keyboard shortcut under the MIDI family. Good to see you on the Hangout, Nick. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we're doing well on time. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. I hope everyone's learned a couple new tricks and tips. Okay, so I just see for Mindset about that he has version 10, I believe, says it's limiting me to 18 audio tracks. So I'm not sure if it's 18 audio inputs or 18 audio tracks. So I don't know any of the versions. So if you could let me know, Mindset, if it's Cubase LE, if it's Cubase AI, Cubase Elements, if it's version 10, if you let us know that would be helpful. You see Michael Teams just asked the same question. Hi, Greg. Is there any feature in Cubase Pro 10 that automatically adapts imported audio's tempo without having to manually do it? Some of the files. So if you, I'm just going to make sure I have this the right way around. So, you could just do a tempo detection on that, but there isn't a way, and that could be problematic for a lot of, different scenarios and could throw a lot of people off. But I don't know of a way to, have the tempo automatically adjust based on, an imported audio file. You could do it afterwards, but, that could cause all sorts of weirdness and different workflows. Okay, so you see Mindset is his 4th day of Cubase. Well, welcome to the Hangout. So if you want to see what version of Cubase, I think if you're on Windows, you could do it from the Help menu. And on Mac platform, you could say About Cubase Pro, and it'll show you here. So, when you say 18 inputs, I wonder if your audio interface has 18 physical inputs, or if it's, because you could use the same input and, use it, so if you have a 2-in, 2-out interface, that means you could record 2 tracks at a time, but, hundreds of tracks depending upon the version that you have. So. You see that Ambient Dave got a pack of Diet Pepsi amongst other stuff. As a non-adult beverage drinker here, yeah, my wife is a big fan of Diet Pepsi, so much that she bought stock in the company. So. So you just see from Nathaniel Walker, I like how musical mode is track-based. I don't like how it creates multiple clips when you use loops. So, if you have, let's say if we have a loop, we'll just go ahead, just do new project. So, the event can also be musical mode as well as the tracks. So let's say I have an audio track here. This track is in musical mode. And I wanted to have a couple of different loops. So say I have that drum loop followed by all right, so I could have these loops, and if I wanted to select all the files and put them into musical mode, they'll all kind of play back kind of at the tempo. So I'll just snap these. Let me just snap them to the grid quickly. Okay, so now when I play back, even though they're all kind of on the same track, they're all going to play back. And we could actually see these. I'm not sure why. Let me just check my routing here. So, but I could take this one loop and just take it not into musical mode. So even as we have, the track itself could be a musical mode, but the individual events don't have to be. So if I wanted this to play at the original tempo, I could just take these two out of musical mode and this into these two in musical mode, and it'll automatically align to the grid. So check that out and see if that helps. Okay, so good, just reading through. Okay, so you see Art C is just mentioning, I just showed up to class late trying to figure out what's going on. So what we're doing is just answering questions. So if you have questions on Cubase, just kind of ask. Okay, so I see that Mindset says it was Cubase LEAI Elements 10 music production software. So, that's probably what the icon says, but when you go to your Cubase, if you could let us know which version. So, but, you could always upgrade to, I know Elements has more tracks, so. All right, so I just see Mindset may have Cubase LE. So with Cubase LE, that comes free with, different audio interfaces. So, you could always, pretty inexpensively upgrade if you need more tracks. So, all right, so we see from Kevin Key Genius. Hello, Greg. How can I be part of this team? Like what you guys are doing. The Club Cubase hangouts that we're doing, we started doing them during the pandemic just to help people. And my travel schedule was freed up, due to COVID. So I was, basically I wanted to, instead of doing these things in person all throughout the, United States, I'm just kind of focusing directly on doing these globally and help people get the most out of Cubase. So you could come and, check out as many of these hangouts as you like, but if you wanted to do more stuff, just let us know. You could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so I see JVI will make a video, so thanks for sending that along. Okay, my chat field jumped on me. Let me just scroll back, see if we can get back to where I was. All right, just bear with me, sorry. Okay, so I may have lost a question or two, but I don't think I was too far off, so I apologize. Okay. Okay, so seeing discussion on different editors' keyboards. Okay. Okay, so we see Charles K in a hangout. Good to see you. All right. Okay, just reading through different comments. All right, so we have a question. As I understand it, in order to turn MIDI to audio, you need to use the render in place option, but Elements doesn't have that available. Is there another way? Do I need to get Artist? So, all you have, there's several different ways of doing this in Elements, so if you have, let's say just some MIDI information. So let's say I'm just going to check my connections very quickly. Bear with me. I'll just open up another project, see if that's going to play back for me. Okay, so let's say I'll have this, and I have a virtual instrument going on.
All at once you kissed my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good?
So let's say I want to take this Rhodes and turn that into an audio file. So I'm just going to solo this track in believe this is the same concept you could do in Elements, but we're just going to say export audio mixdown. And then you'll see probably just a single. So I'll say stereo out. And we want to choose to import this. And you'll probably see like a little thing that says after export. And then you could just say, let's, create audio track or insert into project. So I'll just add this to the queue. And I'll just I don't know how I got 8-bit, but let's say I now will. So once I do this, I just want to say I'm just going to solo that, and then just we'll export audio. Okay, and I'll set my left and right locators around the event. So select event, hit the letter P. And export audio mixdown. So let's say start queue export. And this will basically, and this looks a little more sophisticated than what you have in Elements, but the concepts are the same. Just do a single stereo mix. Everything is, this track is soloed. It's now automatically going to be rendered. We'll put that into, it's going to load into the bottom of the project. So we'll close this. And at that point, you could just have the rendered file, show up directly in your project. So just do file, export, audio mixdown, and then you could just have that particular rendered file automatically imported directly into the project for you. All right, so I just see a comment from Nathaniel Walker. Need to get artists. Steinberg has some really maybe ingenious limitations to the lower SKUs, like no Very Audio, but also no ARA2 in Elements. Laughing out loud. So, the fuller versions will have more features. But for people that are on a budget, if you're we want to have software at like a $99, like in US, a $99 price point, and that will, we have those options, but some of the more advanced features won't be included in that. So, and that's why we have upgrade paths as well. So as your needs and requirements grow, there's a Cubase and a Steinberg solution for you. So you see from Charles K, got here a bit late, as Greg touched on external equipment routing. So we did that a little earlier. So you may have seen it with the delay. So okay, just reading through comments. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we see Mindset's going to join the Discord. All right, so we had a question from Lauren. Can you go over track versions? So we kind of discussed this a little bit earlier, but let's say, let me just see. I may not have it on this computer, but I used to have kind of a track version project, but I don't think I have it on this laptop. There goes my clever scheme of archiving projects I mentioned earlier. All right, so let's say, if we were doing, and often I may see this kind of with band scenarios, or maybe, so let me just jump over to like this project. So let's say, the whole, we did multiple drum tracks. And then what we're able to do, what a track version is let's say we have everything set up exactly as we see fit. So I have the volume, I have the EQ, I have everything kind of perfectly dialed in. I have my channel strip, etc., kind of all set as expected, but I may have multiple takes. So what track versions will allow you to do is to say, okay, I want it to take this and be able to do a new version. That audio file disappears, but all of the audio routing and everything stays the same. So at this point, you could do another version of, like, another recording on top of that. Now, some other areas where this is helpful, and so if you wanted to take, like, okay, we did 6 takes, let's take, the band, take 5. I could select all the tracks and switch track versions. So they're kind of like almost hidden invisible tracks, and they're not only used for just audio parts, but let's say I have, tempo information. So I was unsure of the tempo. I have my tempo track activated, and let's say this is my tempo. I'll just adjust my grid here. So I want this as one tempo track, but maybe I don't want to make a decision. So I wanted a different tempo track to have this laid out, and I wanted to create another track version. And I could do this for MIDI, audio, instrument, chord tracks, tempo tracks. And now we could just choose between the 3 different variations on that particular track, just like that. So we could do that with audio information, different audio recordings as well. So if some people go, okay, why don't you use lanes for that? So I would tend to use lanes for comping a vocal or a guitar solo, and track versions where if it's, okay, I want to take the whole band, record it live, and I want to, at this point switch to take 2 for 8 measures. And then when they get to the bridge, we'll switch to take 6. And then the guitar solo will be take 4. And then you're able to kind of take different versions of tracks without having to have multiple parallel tracks, and copy over all the settings and EQs and processing. So that's kind of what track versions will allow you to do. Okay. So I see Mindset saying he's probably going to upgrade to the Cubase Elements, so that's great. You'll be happy you did it. Okay, so I see a question. I've got Elements 11 and saw with interest that you can create harmonies from a track with Vari Audio. Is that tool available in Cubase Elements? Thanks, David. So I think the Vari Audio is not in Elements. It does come in Artist, but I'm not sure if the Generate Harmony Voices is in Artist or just Pro. So, but I know it's not in Elements. But you could check out, on the Steinberg website, there's a pretty extensive comparison sheet. And I could check if you want me to check specifically on that. I could check if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so I just see, can Cubase please do away with the USB security key? So, they're currently investigating other kind of, identity management systems. So, but, the USB key has worked well, but, we realize that a lot of people don't like it. So they are, currently investigating. It's a huge project when you have millions and millions of users. But they are, actively, creating, new systems for that. So we understand your feelings on that. So I see, when will it be possible to import tracks from another project which also keeps the input bus configuration, given that both projects use the same input connection preset? So I'll just give it a test. So I haven't tried that. Okay, so I'll just add 4 audio tracks here. Okay, so I'll just call this one. If you don't know this trick, if you're naming your tracks, if you type 1 and then hit the tab key, that'll take you to the next track, and you could just name without having to double click. Okay, so we have these, and I will just go ahead and throw just a generic loop on each one.
Remember me. I'm too tired in the end.
Okay, so let's say I will save this. And I'll just save this to my desktop quickly. Okay. All right, I'll just do a new project here. So it looks like my mono inputs are preserved. So I see mono in 1, 2, 3, and 4 that I set up. So make sure that when you have that set here and you have the options, you might have to make sure that the input output channels are also imported. So I just did that, and the inputs automatically carried over. So with the input bus configuration. So see if I did something wrong, just let me know. Okay. So just see, had a question, what kind of bass? Nice playing. So I'm rusty. But that was a Warwick Corvette fretless with Babinga. So it's my favorite basses. Love the Warwick stuff. And Agent K wants me to slap the bass like people hitting the like button. So I'm not much of a slapper. All right, so I see I'm having trouble having Cubase Pro finding Contact 6 from Complete 12 Ultimate. So you may just have to go, I think if you go to the VST instruments, you may have to, it may show up, under, you may see native, I think it may show native instruments, and you may see a 32-bit and a 64-bit, but if you go to like the native instruments, that you should be able to see all the Contact libraries directly in there. But also if you just add an instrument track, so let's say if you just click on the plus sign, let's add instrument, you should be able to see, and you could collapse or expand all these views, and you should be able to see that there. So, tons of our customers are running Contact. So okay, just reading through comments. Okay, still reading through comments. So all this great discussion. So so I see, please update Logical Editor or give us better sequencers. So let us know what you want to do in a Logical Editor. So it's pretty powerful for what it is already. So okay, so we have a question. I played my MIDI bass line in tempo of 80. My friend sent me an audio file vocal in tempo 160. How can I fit my bass line to that vocal tempo? So, there's a couple ways to do it. So one is, unless your MIDI track is set to be in, unless it's set to be in linear mode, it will automatically just play back the tempo. So if it's to the point where the part you played is half the length of the vocal, and you need to, let's say I'll come here. So let's say, where there's just like the vocalist, or there's kind of a miscommunication on that. So let's say I'll put this into a quick step entry. So as I come here, let's say I just put in. Okay, so I think you could go to the logical editor. And I think there's even presets for like doubling the length of notes. You know, you could also choose to double the tempo. So if you wanted to do that. So let's say I will just come here. Let me undo that move. So say I'm going to take my length and position and multiply by 2. Okay, so I think if I do this, I can now just kind of, you know, double the tempo or half the tempo, kind of using some of the logical editor presets. So I think that should be able to do it for you, but that's if it's like half the tempo of what it was. So. So just see what is my email. Okay, so I see Agent K got it, but again, you could always email me at Club Cubase. It's Steinberg, Steinberg.de. All right, good to see Fred Robinson in the Hangout. And also with the, with native instruments, if you're not seeing it in the plugin, because it is still, I think, a VST2 plugin after all these years. If you go to your VST plugin manager, make sure that you click here and that folder where the native instruments plugins are is actually showing up in there as well. So try that. Okay, so I know we had some questions that were sent in, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. Bear with me while I get my document open. Okay, a quick file set up here for this. All right. All right, so so we had a question. Okay, so I think Tan May had asked me a question in earlier Hangouts. He was wanting to know what the producer DJ Zed, what sample rate and bit depth he uses for his projects. So I was talking to some of the members of Team Zed yesterday, so I brought up the question with them. So what their sample rate and bit depth that they use are 32-bit 44.1K. And one of the engineers was saying, that if he was doing like classical recording or like Americana, country, like a very acoustic based instruments, he would definitely go for higher sample rates. But a lot of times, depending on the source material, if it's kind of loop based, at that point, they would kind of keep it at source, and they've just found everything works kind of better at 44.1 for them. Okay, so Jan had I think he wanted me to clarify. So we had some questions in earlier Hangouts about kind of the discrepancies between the color schemes between chord tracks and the new scale assistant. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's say when we look at our particular chords here, so let's say I will choose to base this on the scale/chord track. So if we do this, we could see notes that are within the, so what I want to do is I'm going to just create a chord track here quickly. So I'll go to my edit menu and let's go to, project chord track to create chord symbols. Okay, so now when we go to look at our scale assistant, we could choose to use the editor scale. So this will show if it's in or out of key, but if we used a chord track, so let's say we're in G, now we could see notes that are within the chord, notes that are within the key, or this blue color, and notes that are out of the chord will be red. So depending on if you're using the editor scheme, this will show you the key, and this will show you kind of more information to indicate the chords, the key, and out of key. So within the scale assistant and the key editor, you could toggle between the editor scale and the chord track. Thanks, Jan, for mentioning that to point that out. Okay, so we have a question. In Cubase, is there a shortcut to toggle on-off all instances of the same plugin at the same time? I've got a console emulations on all my tracks. It would save me a lot of time if there was a way to turn them all off on again without doing it manually. Thanks again. So I don't know of a way to do it by the plugin name, but it could be done pretty easily by the plugin slot. So if you have, so I imagine a lot of these, you may start off, if you're doing kind of console emulation, you may want to have it into kind of the same plugin slot. But I don't know a way of saying, turn off, envelope shaper plugin, or turn off, other plugins. But let's say if I have a number of tracks selected here and I wanted all my drums to, just click on the right area. Oh, sorry, just hitting the wrong modifier key. Hate when it's operator error. So let's say I'm just going to enable Q-Link by holding down Alt or Option plus Shift, and I will come right over here. So let's say I wanted to put on like tape emulation on the consoles, on each of the drums. So I want all of them to have magneto on the tracks. So we look at this. So if this is how it's kind of set up, you could come over here and take all of track 1, all of insert slot 1, and just come over here and hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, or enable Q-Link, and just kind of turn off and on multiple plugins. But if they're all in different insert slots, there's no real way of saying find every plugin named Magneto and turn it off, or delete it. So it could be how it's organized, but I think if you organize it that way, I think this is from Larry, or from Lewis rather, sorry. Just give that a try and see how it is. Okay. So we see, does Cubase Pro 11 have a built-in scope for phase checking? I know the old zoom in method exists. Thanks. So if you wanted to kind of check phase, so let's say, we could use some of the plugins like in the control room. Let's say I'll just use like the Supervision plugin. So, if you wanted to check for phase between two tracks, you could come over here, So we can see our phase kind of represented here. Let me just close out a couple of these. I'll just have kind of monster phase go. But if I wanted to solo like my kick, so you could see if these are, you know, so as you work with this, you know, we can see kind of the whole mix. But let's say like if I have my snare top and bottom, and when we see like the phase kind of go more left to right on particular tracks, that would indicate a phase issue, versus when we see it kind of more vertically oriented. When you see it more horizontal, that would give you an indication that the tracks are going to be kind of out of phase with each other. But that would give you kind of an idea of what's going on there. So a lot of people now I see we're just having, you know, the Supervision plugin kind of activated at all times. Okay. Okay, so this is an interesting question. Trying to copy velocity data, CC11, velocity data to CC11 in the MIDI editor page. How do I select a velocity data without altering the velocity? If I left click, select all events and lane copy, switch to CC11 lane and paste, nothing happens. So if we have MIDI, you know, we can think of velocity as not its own independent MIDI message. So velocity is actually a component of the MIDI note message. So let's say I'll just add a quick instrument track. Let's just throw in a couple of notes. And you could kind of use one of the logical editor presets. So let's say I have this as my velocity. Okay, so, and what I could do if I wanted to turn the velocity of those particular notes into MIDI CC data, or I'll just play something in, give Gareth a bonus melody here. Or I'll just use that. Okay, so let's say this is our velocity. Okay, so let's go to the logical editor. And then you'll see a preset. I think it's maybe under... Okay, insert MIDI volume for velocity. So change this controller here to 11. So what this is going to do is going to take the velocity value of the particular notes and turn that into, use that as the basis for volume or expression, in this case, CC11. So I hit apply. And now... we could see that the velocity information has been translated directly into MIDI CC11. So that way, if you have one instrument that's kind of velocity based for dynamics and the other one that you copy a part to is set for, you know, to respond dynamically to MIDI CC11, you could just have that translate directly over. Okay, so this is from Johnny Diaz. You already explained how to change the tempo of a song after recorded by going into the pool, selecting and changing it. But what if I wanted to change just a part of the song and not the whole song? This is where we could use a tempo map quite easily. So let's just revert this quickly. Okay, so let's say I'm playing my song and I have all of my tracks in musical mode. So we have these selected here, and I'm going to add a tempo track. So once the tempo track is activated, I can say, okay, we're going to go right here and just put a tempo change in, and let's go back. So as we do this, let's say I want it to slow down right here. Now it's going to slow down. And so I just wanted to ramp up. So you just kind of do tempo changes, and once those tracks are in musical mode, again, they're just going to automatically follow those particular tempo changes. I often call it like a tempo parasite. So that's all you have to do, and just, without skipping a beat, it'll just kind of stretch that audio all day long. Okay, let's go back to our live feed. Thanks everyone for wonderful questions. So I just see, is there an arpeggio or sequencer in Cubase, which is similar to the Ableton one? So I don't know what the Ableton one is, but I'll just do a quick new project. So there's all sorts of different arpeggiators included. So if I wanted to, and you can see these as MIDI inserts. So if you wanted to just kind of So I will go over here to MIDI inserts. So there's two different ones. You'll have Apache SX, and you could actually drag and drop your own sequences into that one if you wanted to get started with a very simple one. So kind of whatever chords you play. So if I'll just hold down a chord and let's say, okay, I want to change the play order. I want it to go up only. Okay, but I wanted the lengths to be 30-second notes, let's say. Or I want the lengths to be quarter notes. I want to set the key range. And as I just hold down a different note here. Let's say, let's make this 2 octaves or 2 octaves in a minor third. And the cool thing is you could actually just kind of come here, hit record, and I'm just going to hold down one chord. And now I could just say, okay, let's just do. So, and then that will actually record like the whole arpeggiator for you. So play around with the Apache and Apache SX MIDI plugins. Okay, reading through some comments here. Thanks again for all the wonderful questions. Okay, just reading through. Okay. Just see, I need to use Howling and Sonic more in my production. I also have Howling 6 and have not used it yet. You should definitely play around, spend a weekend and dig into Howling and Sonic and Howling 6. It's a pretty remarkable program. So we're seeing lots of people with 32-bit plugin stuff, and there's good analogy to DirectX plugins. Yeah. All right, reading through comments. Okay, so this comment, thanks for the scale assistant question from Ambient Dave. And once again, I hope you have a wonderful birthday. Okay, lots of great discussion. I see a great comment from Fred Robinson. I should be able to load an 8-bit ZX Spectrum game from tape cassette into my MacBook Pro. I can't find a tape slot. Yeah. So, it's a very apt comment. I just see, so I want to use Cubase over FL. FL, like me, is getting old. So I think Cubase doesn't really predispose a particular workflow for you. Okay, so lots of discussion. See how we're doing on time. So I see we're just about out of time. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. So again, if you want to send questions in advance, send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I know that some people, when we did our little Christmas hangout, had asked if we could do that. So I was thinking maybe next Friday we could do maybe a 3-hour hangout and maybe an hour of a Zoom chat. So if you guys want to actually talk and see each other in person where someone else besides me can talk, if that sounds like a good idea, if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, leave comments. And if you want to do that, we could maybe do the last hangout of the month and have like a little get together where people could actually talk and meet. And if you want to do that, leave a comment in the chat field, or you could send an email to me and I could create a Zoom link if people want to do that. With that, I want everyone to stay safe and healthy, and we'll see everyone again on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.